Winners understand that women are a lot of work. Like, women have a long laundry list of wants and needs, and us guys can have like a list of wants and needs too, but it's not to the same extent usually. As a guy, a lot of the times, especially as you age as a man, when it comes to looking at boys and girls and the way that they interact with each other, like before the teenage years, during the teenage years, it's quite similar. Our interactions with like we find that the personalities and characteristics between a man and a woman when they're extremely young, well, a boy or a girl or a man or woman extremely of an extremely young age, like I'm talking before you hit the age of 20, and usually a lot before that, you can find that although, yeah, they may be in intimate relationships and romantic, they might have some type of romantic settlement with each other. It's very, because you're a kid, you've kind of got the same interests. She likes playing with toys, you like playing with toys. It's that type of thing where it's just kind of like you're not both of you are not really mature enough yet to have grown into your own as man and woman, and then to develop that sense of like separation between interests and ways of thinking. But then once you turn 20 and then beyond that, you kind of start to realize that how different men and women are, and the transition from that, from boy to man, from girl to woman, and it's like it's a large contrast, and it's only natural. This is like the development of life itself, and like God made it that way, and I think it's beautiful that God made it that way, because then when man and woman come together, it makes a lot more like the relationship becomes a lot more valuable, than a relationship between a boy and a girl, you know so um and I think, like, women just want a man who can win, that, like, it's just that simple. I just think a lot of guys, they look at it as like, oh, she's too much work, or she's this and that, she's demanding this, she's demanding that, like, I don't have time, I don't have energy, blah 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 blah. And it's like, no, well, if you really love her to a degree, you probably find some way to fit that into your life schedule, right? um and going back to the laundry list of things that women want and need, it's a lot longer than men's. And I feel like it's because they kind of have like as a man, especially if you kind of have a strong willpower, and you've built up like your natural masculine essence from within inside of you. Over time, you start to demand less things from the world, right? You start to you know kind of not you start to like devalue certain things, and you just start to like kind of be more satisfied and content with more of like the basics of life. You could still be successful, like, you may, as a man, you might just focus on your finances, fitness, you know what I'm saying? But when it comes to having fun, that's probably not one of your focuses. That's probably something you've put to the side, whereas that is still whereas that would be more of like a focus for a woman, to have fun, right? And your fitness and finances for her actually directly correlates with bringing fun, right? For her. And so it works like that, because it's like a contrast of like, okay, I like these things that are way different to the things that you like, but when we put them together, actually it makes a whole load of sense, you know? But as a boy, like, as a man, you would be like prioritizing fun more than you would be prioritizing maybe, say, fitness and finances. And then it's just that development, and it's just that like building character over time. But I mean, I think when it comes to women, it's like they have a long list of things that they want. And she wants to get her nails done. She wants to have her hair laid. She wants, to make sure her body's always looking nice and tea. And she wants to go to the movies, she wants to go to a zoo to see wild animals, she wants to travel, all of these things she wants to do. And I'm not saying men don't also want to do these things, but it's like less of a priority for us. And it's kind of like a thing of, you know, we're going to work towards making these things a possibility. And if it happens kind of thing. We're not kind of like in a rush to get these things done, but women have like a timeline for these things, like literal age, like, oh, by 25, I want to do this, I want to do that. Whereas a man, you kind of grow older and you get to your 20s or you get to 25 and you're like, even though I haven't done this thing yet, it's okay. Like, I know I'm going to get there. I'm going to do it. Especially when you're on your stuff, right? But if you're not on your stuff by that age, then it's like, okay, I don't know when I'm going to do this, but I need to get on my stuff now because I possibly could have done something by this age, but I just haven't because I haven't been on my grind and I've just been coasting or strolling through life. And I think, like women, I think women just ultimately want a dude that's just gonna be like, yeah, like take on board everything that needs to be taken on and not run away from anything. It's kind of this thing of where it's like, as a man, you got to win the war. You can only win the woman over once you win the war, and the war is for life. It's from the moment that because from the moment that she's born up until the moment she passes away, she's gonna have expectations and desires from you, and you got to be able to, as she ages, those things can grow and develop, but like you got to always be able to be in alignment with that in order to keep the relationship with her. Otherwise she's looking elsewhere. There are other candidates that are waiting for their turn, but I guess the mission is that they never get their turn, because you just keep rising to the top and you just stay on top, kind of like a king, and you just don't, you don't ever have any. There are princes under you, but they just never become king. Because when it comes to going to war with the king, they can't beat you. Like when it comes to having a battle, they can't take you down. And you got to be that man that can't be taken down by another man, but it's not in direct competition with other men. It's just that you got to know this competition, but you got to be able to be competitive in the eyes of your woman, right? Not necessarily being competitive with another individual man that you don't know from a can of paint. It's not that, so you just got to be able to compete with her standards and things like that. Because I think a lot of guys ruin relationships and kind of ruin a good thing with women who genuinely had the best interests for them, but they were too weak to be able to, last past maybe a few weeks or a few months or up to a year in a relationship. And there's probably a lot of guys that are like constantly in and out of relationships, having relationships for a few months, half a year, up to a year, and then with another girl and with another girl. And it's like, why do you think that you keep repeating, the same mistakes, but just with it, having a different face each time when you're doing it? And it's simply because you're not willing to progress past a certain point, in your manhood. Like, you've got to be able to make sure that, you are constantly progressing in some way, and in a way that's kind of, relevant for her. Like, you got to have like this versatility to you where you can kind of you can kind of be a bunch of different things at once. You can be a businessman, you can be looking like an athlete, you know what I'm saying? You can be charismatic, and funny, and be able to tell a joke and to take a joke as well. And all of these things, like, that's what women are looking for. They are looking for they're looking for everything encompassed into one in a man. And women don't play. I think a lot of guys get it confused with women, like, oh, but I heard that she did this with so and so, and now she's doing this with so and so. And it's like, probably because they were playing games with her. You know, women don't look at it as like, oh yeah, I want to go around and get to know a bunch of different men. No, if anything, women want to get it right on the first time, you know, but a lot of the times they don't, because when they're young, I guess they're more led by a little bit more of like lust, just due to inexperience of relationships within life, you know, so they don't really know how to love at that point, especially if they're pretty young, getting into their first relationship. They don't really know what love is. They just feel lust and kind of act off of that. And you know, that's why many first relationships between most people all around the world will never work out, because as humans we just succumb to lust in general, not just for women but for men too. And so that's why it's very rare to hear like your first love also ends up being your very last love, you know, and you get married and you have children together with each other, and then you pass away together. You know what I'm saying? Like that is a very rare story. It's a very rare story in and of itself, actually, if we're being honest. Most people, they just separate and, you know, either never get married or get divorced or whatever it is, right? And even more rare for it to be the first attempt, like, you know, something that came out of that straight out of high school or college or university, you know, where most people's first relationships start to arise in life. So it's kind of like, um it's it's a beautiful thing, but I mean that is not going to be everybody's experience. But what I'm just saying is like, you like, in order to become a warrior, a lot of the times as a man, you had to have been weak first. It's just the way it's going to work, and it's going to suck, because you kind of going to know subconsciously that you're weak, but you don't know how to get strong, right? Because you, I don't know, you haven't been, I guess, exposed to certain information, and maybe you just haven't lived enough life and gained enough maturity. People mature at different ages. That's what I'm saying. Some guys, they mature at 13, but other guys mature at 30. You know, it just like, a lot of that's going to depend on life experience, you know, upbringing and all of that. But just let it come to you. You know, don't rush anything. Don't rush relationships with women or anything like that. Kind of let it come to you. You know, I think I've done a great job of kind of trying to let it come to me, especially over the last 11 months or so, which was like, I'm in a relationship now, but it's like that I've been in for 3 months. But before that, I had like an 8 month period where I wasn't in a relationship, you know. And some people might look at that as like 8 months is kind of a long time. It isn't super long, but I mean, it's fairly long, you know. So it's like, but in that time, I've done a lot of work on myself, and I realized that it's like, okay, I think I'm the problem. But if I'm the problem, it's okay. I can fix me, you know? I'm not looking to fix anybody else, because people are their own individual entities and they are the way they are, right? There's no real changing them, you know? Um, they have to maybe realize and come to a time in their life where they start to work on themselves. But for me, I can only do that for myself. No one else, just like no one else can do it for me. And that's okay. We got our own lives to live, and it's the way God made things. So I think guys just have to become strong and put their pride and ego to the side when you're dealing with you know, when you're dealing with women, and just look at it as like, okay, you know, maybe I'm not gonna have a preference based off of like race or anything like that. Maybe it's okay. Maybe if my wife is a black woman, or she's a white woman, or she's an Asian woman, or she's a Hispanic woman, it doesn't really matter. Maybe I'm not going to have a preference on these type of things. Maybe I'm just going to, you know what I'm saying, like open myself up to whatever possibility. Maybe I'm not going to have a preference for location. Maybe we'll have to be long distance for a while, and she could be on the other side of the world. You know what I'm saying? And meaning that there will be no way for us to have any physical contact, so there won't be any intercourse going on for a while until you meet, potentially, right? But it's these type of long suffering disciplines that you should be open to. Not that you should necessarily chase a woman from halfway across the world, but if it just so happens that a woman halfway across the world catches your attention, and she's just more present, more of like a personality, and more aligned with you, more than anything, than a woman who's like your next door neighbor, then it's like you you know um you would be better off choosing a woman halfway across the world than a woman who's your next door neighbor, who's kind of like not really, you know, aligned with you, has completely different morals and characteristics than you. There's no real synergy between you. So, but are you going to still try and force any type of relationship out of convenience? That's the question. Are you going to just succumb to, well, she's in my environment right now, she's next door, so I could just, you know what I'm saying, go chat to her and see if she's willing to bust it down or anything? Like, you got to get over all of that and be like, no, like what's let me lean towards something that's gonna have the highest like likelihood to work out over a longer period of time. Because, you know, women, and the reason women test a lot, and if you find a woman that's testing you a lot, you're like, why is she testing me so much? You know, why does it feel like it hurts sometimes when she says, um you know, certain things like, oh, I looked at another guy today, or I found a guy cute today, or something like that. She might tease you and say something just to see if you're gonna lose your mind and start like being emotionally reacting to her and being emotionally abusive, which might turn to physical abuse and all of these things that she's calculating, like, okay, what is he going to be like? Like, if we haven't met yet, especially if we haven't met yet, what is there that I can do? If there's nothing I can do physical, what can I say that's kind of like verbal to him, just to see, you know what I mean? It's like just a trial run to see how the relationship would actually go before, before it progresses to that point where we, you know, meet and you know, physically and see how things go. It's like, it's just a precaution, and it's just a method of security and strategy. It's a strategy that women use for security, is to test men. And she's basically essentially giving you the opportunity to continue to date her, right? And continue to get to know her. So you shouldn't take it as offense, like, oh, she's testing me. Why would she test me? I'm the man. I'm like, you know, better than all these other guys, all these other options she has. She can't get any better than me. Like, bro, that's ego. And even if there's some truth to that, it's like, you think that one can't come along in the future? You know, that you think that there can't be a better version of you somewhere out there, but in a different guy? Or would you rather be the better version of you now so that that other different guy doesn't ever have a chance? I'd rather be the best version of me now so that the future me will be happy that, will be happy about the previous me, about what I did within that time in order to get where I am now, if that makes, or where I will be. So you got to weigh up, you know, the pros and the cons, and just really weigh up the decisions, the pros and cons to the decisions that you're making right now, to make sure that you're making the right decision and that you don't fumble or have any regrets later on, like, damn, should have did this, but I'm older now and all of that, I don't have as much energy. Well, I don't think you really did your due diligence, you know. So, and you got no one else to blame. You can go ahead and scream at the world, but nobody's listening to you because they got their own lives to live. You see what I'm saying? So I'm trying to speak to you as an individual, like, be careful what you do, because what you do today is it's gonna come back up tomorrow, you know. It's gonna decide what tomorrow looks like. So I wanted to leave that message with you guys, to get you to think outside the box and open your minds to a different paradigm of thinking.